Thank you for watching another episode of Speaking with the Senator. I'm Senator Kevin Avard, and welcome to the show. We've had a lot of discussion in the past with new bills that are coming up. We were on Carl Seidel's show, The People's View, and we've had other shows. And today we're going to talk a little bit local and yet statewide. And it has to do with the right to know. I'm sure that there have been other shows talking about this topic. But it's really important to understand, again, what is going on here in Nashua and concerns individuals have. There is a piece of legislation, and I happen to be one of the co-sponsors. But, sometimes you co-sponsor a bill just for a conversation. But the more I learn about the bill, the more I'm thinking I have a sanguine opinion of it. And that's HB 1002. If you want to find out what's going on with that, you can go to the General Court website. You can actually watch the YouTube hearing on it. And if you have the time and the interest to get into the weeds, you can listen to the testimony that goes on in the House. And it happens in the Senate as well. And this was Dick Gagnon's vision years ago, where people could be that much more informed. And in itself, it's a right to know, because now you don't have to depend on the news. You can go right to the source, watch the video clip, stop it, pause it, go back and forth, and get the information that you need. And you can also get the committee hearing reports, which people, if you thought you heard something or you couldn't make it out, it is in writ form so that you can actually find out what's going on. But the right to know is there for you because you want to know what your government's doing, whether it's the Arts Center, is it 10 million, 25 million, 30 million? Was it sponsored by an LLC, that nonprofit, two nonprofits, and a for-profit? How do we get there? Well, you have a right to know. And on this topic, I have somebody that's very familiar with right to know and who's gone through the process, and you've probably seen her on the shows, Laurie Ortolano, a very familiar face and outspoken on these issues because she cares. And we want to make sure that you're informed. And so I invited her on the show. Thank you, Laurie, for coming on this.
Thanks for having me.
It's not Laurie, it's Laura.
No, it's Laurie.
It's Laurie.
Yeah.
Laurie and
You
Laura.
got it.
It sounds like a song.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show, and I really
Thanks for
appreciate you
having me.
being here.
Yeah.
So HB 1002 is before the House. It almost got killed. So then somebody tried to table it, and then now it's reconsidered, going back to committee to look at some amendments to be re-exec. Talk about it.
Okay, so, my preference would be to see it killed because I'm not certain what amendments could be made to it that would address how to apply these fees in a fair manner among all the different municipalities and towns in the state. You have a lot of governments, if they want to be particularly dark about their records and controlling, then they're going to engage in activities that are unscrupulous, unsavory, and put you through a process that's more arduous and costly, and they're going to be able to calculate those fees. And the only way you're going to be able to fight that is to go to the ombudsman or into court.
I wanted to ask about the ombudsman. How's that working?
Well, I think it's on. It's a little bit of a rocky start because it's a new office. The rules are still being developed on how that.
They haven't got the rules for that yet?
Not fully. Nope, they're still under development. And so, that it's an untried and untrue process right now. It's in its infancy, and I have not used it. I'm particularly concerned with Nashua. Nashua is a different kind of beast in and of itself when it comes to dealing with the city. They're very manipulative. I think that they don't operate in the proper realm when it comes to compliance with right to know and other laws as well with our money. And trying to take the mess that's in Nashua and throw it into an ombudsman office, which is brand new, just getting set up. I don't want to be the one blamed for ruining it,
I think Senator Carson was one that was really championing the ombudsman, and because she knew that there was a problem, and as soon as I mentioned Nashua, the eyes rolled back up north, and it's like, yeah, we know, it's a difficult issue in that we get so many complaints.
And why is it the state isn't able to help us more? I get really frustrated that the agencies within the state, the AG's office, the county attorney, we just can't reach out to get assistance. I mean, we were able to get that claim against the mayor for electioneering and a cease and desist order issued, which was...
So was he criminally charged for something with that?
Well, he didn't get the criminal charge because the statute of 1 year had run out, because it took the AG's office more than a year to investigate, and so you only have a certain amount of time. But
so maybe we should change the statute of limitations on that.
Make it broader. But they did issue the cease and desist, and that was good. I think, though, I really think our AG's office needs to have a municipal division, or they have a public.
That's interesting.
I really feel we're big enough and we have enough problems that we need a municipal division, because, like, the Art Center issue, there's a lot of fraud in there, in my opinion, a lot of mismanagement of public money.
Who owns that, by the way?
It's owned by a private company called Impact Corp, which has a board of directors picked by the city.
And the taxpayers pay for their benefit.
They pay.
I don't
They pay
understand.
all the bills for that corporation. The corporation has no money but our money, and we took all of our.
Isn't that the perfect definition of a fascism?
It's a mistake. It's just a huge mess on how that got done, and it really was totally the improper application of this federal program, which is really designed for for-profits, and it was taking a square peg and throwing it in a round hole and pounding really hard. And
I was talking I know it's off topic, but I was talking to I think it was Senator Carson, talking about that development by Mine Falls and, the Superfund cleanup.
yeah, the Mohawk.
Yeah, so, Nashua is asking $3 million for Superfund cleanup, but they've got $30 million for an art center.
Yeah, I know.
She's scratching her head. It's like, how's that work?
And it's not 30. That building cost us close to 40. Okay, that's a $40 million project. It was billed as a $21 million bond, but we had to take on an additional $9.55 million loan from the Muskoma Bank to do the federal program, and we're on the hook for $7.1 million of that loan.
So what's interesting about that is the citizens, the landowners of Nashua who are paying their property taxes to support this, don't get in free.
No, they don't. And the most bothersome part is we essentially bought the building. We funded it with our dollars, and now we're renting it back, and we're paying yearly rent of $500,000 to rent a place that we own, because we had to turn it over to a private company in order to accept this federal money for 7 years. There's a 7-year window for this federal money to be accepted, because a tax credit is being applied to the investor. And ordinarily, when you develop a property, the whole idea of this new market tax credits is that you inject money into low-income neighborhoods that you're looking to improve the economic conditions and the lifestyle for people who are there, and job opportunities for them. So the city was able to sort of paint the picture that this art center and the Alex Shoe Store is in a low-income neighborhood and needs this funding. And in order to get that funding and to give that tax credit, you would usually have investors come and invest, because businesses, profitable businesses, will take the investment tax credit of 39%, make money, and support this development. Well, there were no investors for the Nashua Art Center. The bank was the investor. So the bank became the investor, and then a private company needed to be established to give the tax credits. The city of Nashua is not a tax-paying entity, so it couldn't issue tax credits to an investor because it doesn't pay taxes. So they had to form a private company in order to give the tax credits out. And they had to take all of our bond money, the $21 million, and give it to the private company. And then they needed more money. The project was really far more than the $25 million. So in order to get the tax credit money, they took another They took a total $9.55 million loan from the bank. And right now, the private company, MPAC Corp., is paying interest on that loan. But the reason we're paying rent is because MPAC has no money. They only have our money. So our money is paying the interest on the loan back to the bank.
So how does the right to know fit into all of this?
Well, once it started going in this direction and they formed the two nonprofit companies. There were two nonprofit companies first. My belief was those were public companies and they were holding public meetings. Somewhere they were meeting when the project first started, they started cutting the hole in the ground.
Where the minutes?
And the minutes. And I was looking for those records and I couldn't find them. And so I started asking, really in 2021, September, are these companies public? Are they subject to the right to know law? And no one would answer me. And their inability to answer, and what happened is they were holding minutes in the auditorium at City Hall. Meetings, and they weren't posting them.
And they weren't televised.
And they could have televised, and they didn't televise, and they didn't do minutes. And
everything's televised there.
I know, but they deliberately didn't televise. Okay. And,
wow.
Director Cummings and his administrative assistant were going and sitting at the table of all those meetings with the board of directors, who was picked by the city of Nashua, the mayor and probably legal office and Director Cummings. They were selected and they were essentially approved by the board through legislation to form those nonprofit companies. And the very interesting thing is one of the nonprofits owns 100% of the shares of the for-profit, and the board of directors for both companies are identical. So how does the nonprofit police and make certain that the for-profit is operating correctly with our money and doing all the right things? They're the same people looking at each other.
Is the mayor on the board?
No, he's not. It's 5 individuals, business leaders in the community, but they are extremely conflicted in this arrangement. Really, board of directors, laws, and I'm going to research whether I think the state of New Hampshire has some laws on board of director fiduciary responsibilities, and I feel that they have violated their fiduciary responsibilities.
Who would that fall under, the banking or the...
It's corporate stuff. I'd start with the Secretary of State office for the filing of corporations and find out where it goes from there.
Interesting.
But that's sort of what happened. So the right to know law became very important to me because I started saying, where are the minutes, where are the meetings? And then the problem I had was I was asking a basic question at first, like, are these subject to 91A? You created legislation approved by the Board of Aldermen that was for public nonprofit organizations that were formed under RSA 162G, which is the same RSA that creates building industrial development authorities for the state. And Nashua has a BIDA. We have a building industry development authority committee. The members are all picked by the Board of Aldermen and the mayor. They're approved and they hold public meetings and they spend public money and everything is public. I can go to those meetings, they're posted on the calendar. Now here we formed 2 nonprofits that are public corporations under the same RSA. So my belief was they should be there. Where are they? And our money, $21 million passed to them first and then over to the nonprofit. So I should be able to find these. And they ran me around like something fierce. They wouldn't answer. They deflected. And then in December of 2021, when I was really digging into the new market tax credit, they held a meeting up in the auditorium because I found the contract that for the consultant they hired to be the expert assisting us on this program. And one of the terms of his contract was that he would do educational programming for citizens. Like this was a complex deal. And a big part of selling this was educating your public on what it was. But they never did that.
They never did that, yeah.
So after they signed the deal December 17th of 2020, and December 15th of 2021, they held a public meeting to explain it a year later. And it was in the auditorium, and they brought the consultant in, Neil Cannon.
You gotta pass the bill to find out what's in it. You gotta...
Right. So he comes, and he was a very knowledgeable man, very nice man. But once again, there were quite a few people in there. They never took a roll call. They never did minutes, which really surprised me after. They didn't videotape. But I will tell you, and they posted it as an informational meeting presentation on new market tax credits, When I got there, it was a Q&A. Now, they should have posted it as a Q&A because then you know you're coming in and you get to ask questions and get answers. I walked in and cold. I realized it was a Q&A. I would have prepared differently. But my very first question to this guy was, are your corporations subject to RSA 91A and the right to know law? Do I have a right to the records and the meetings that are being held by these companies? He looked at me and said, great question. I have no idea. So this consultant who was clearly working with the city to do this work was never told about the importance of a municipality having open records. And what was most disturbing is Director Cummings was sitting at the table right next to him while he was presenting. And he was looking at me, Director Cummings, and I said, are these subject to RSA 91A? And he said, great question. I have no idea. I looked right over to Director Cummings and I said, and he spun around in his seat and faced the board and never answered me. What was so ironic is I learned later, when all these meetings weren't being posted, that 2 days earlier in that room, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, at the same time I believe our meeting was, they held a board meeting for those corporations. And it was never posted properly. So, that's the thing that concerns me, is that they don't, he should have said, oh, Mrs. Ortolano, we just had a meeting in here, and we have to do these. And yes, they are subject. But by December, I'm scratching my head going, what's going on here? And then I continued to push and ask, and I went to the budget hearing in June, and I went to the microphone, and I asked the mayor point blank, are these corporations subject to the right to know law? Can I go to the meetings? Where are they? Where are the records? And within a couple of months later, they posted the minutes on Tim Cummings' economic development page, which was in totally the wrong location. It wasn't with the public records under the agenda minute page on the website. So again, nobody would ever know to find them.
Right.
And by August, I filed my lawsuit of 2022. I was really frustrated. I didn't want to file a lawsuit, but I let them run me around from September of 2021 until August of 2022. I gave them a lot of time to fix the issue and to be forthright, and they wouldn't do it.
Is this like a RICO act? I mean,
I think it is. I think there's some RICO elements here. I think there's some really, really big time wrongdoing here with public funds. And I would tell any municipality in this state, do not engage in one of these deals on a new markets tax credit. I'm not against new market tax credits. They're there for public business. I mean,
right.
For-profit businesses
Sure.
to access. They're perfectly awesome, great in those when applied the way they're intended to. But nonprofit municipal organizations are not the right application to go after that type of money. And if you're going to do it, you better set up very clear guidelines and communications with your public on how their public records are going to be accessible.
Has the municipal association piped in on this at all?
Nothing. Because they're so controlled by, I think, the Democratic Party of Nashua. That, and it's such a, we have such a singular, we have a one-party system in Nashua, essentially.
Well, you got 3 wards that aren't.
I know, and that's good. But that one-party system has hurt us. I'm really happy that 5 of the representatives from Nashua did vote against this bill for HB 1002, and that's encouraging.
Right.
5 out of 27. I'd like to see more change.
And what danger does 1002 do? What does it make? Does it make it more expensive for individuals to get?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What happens to senior citizens on fixed income? My friend Laura Calhoun, who did all the digging into a loan for the Arts Center that was never put on the books, a $7.1 million loan. She went back and forth for 5 months. And she
At her own expense.
And she had to write 15 right-to-knows going into the finance office, trying to get these records and find what was going on. It was all the same topic.
What you should do? You're a Nashua citizen.
Right.
You have a TV show here. You should do a documentary.
I would like to.
You can do that because this is your station.
Yes.
And if you had the documents, you can do them in PDFs and do a 1 or 2 hour documentary on the process of this. But again, the 91A is there for the citizens, and so one of the things that the kickbacks that the politicians are hearing, well, people are using it as a weapon, and that's part of the
But we can fight that. And,
Right.
And I got a response from my Ward 3 rep. She
Okay.
got involved, Sherry Dutsey, who lives over in my neighborhood, with this issue, and she voted for this bill. And she wrote to the Right to Know New Hampshire group and I think the Judiciary Committee saying, I've always supported Right to Know. However, I am appalled that Right to Know is being used by a few individuals to harass local cities and town employees who request absurd information in absurd amounts. Nashua has spent close to $1 million to answer these requests, which are of no value, serve no purpose, and many times are not even picked up, copies, or read as email. And she was telling Right to Know New Hampshire, if we respect the Right to Know law, we would do a better job policing our people who are destroying our democracy. This was really disappointing for me to read.
Yeah, so behave, Laurie.
And the other thing
That's what she's saying.
Right.
Yeah.
$1 million, where does that number come from? I mean, I had the city announce in a public meeting in 2019 or 20 that in 6 weeks I had cost the city $100,000.
Is that because they lost the lawsuit?
No, it was just in my questions. Yeah, just for my questions. And I remember writing and saying, are there any documents that show that I cost the city $100,000?
You could just throw out a number and not have to be worried about it. Right?
I didn't have any records. It was a guess.
Yeah.
Okay. And when I see her as a long-term state rep say, to answer requests which are of no value, serve no purpose, and many times aren't even picked up.
Says who? And how do you know that?
Where did she get that information? And let me talk about the value of mine. When I started with the assessing office and I dug all those records, I found out that our assessing office hadn't done an update or a real measure and list in 30 years. I found out that our data was in disarray and hadn't really been recalibrated and reset in a very long time. I found out that they were not handling property depreciation correctly in the software programs. I found out we had an assessor sleeping in the parking lot on the rail trail and at the Holiday Inn, claiming he was going to properties doing assessments when in fact he was sleeping, and he had a long history of porn addiction, and he ended up staying. And I got the DRA to investigate through my Right to Know requests and data I got, and they sanctioned 3 of the assessors involved with these Nashua assessments.
People in Nashua don't know this.
Right. And so that's what my Right to Knows did. And then I was able to win my property appeal up before the BTLA because I had done all that digging to represent myself and present it.
But that has no value to her.
That had no value. Now with the Art Center, I agree I've had to dig up a lot of information. But look what it uncovered. A really very unfortunate case of fraud and public mismanagement and falsification of records, and you name it. And, it's pretty disgusting. And she says no value, no purpose. And as far as me not picking up records, first of all, they really don't allow inspection of records in Nashua, which is a big problem because Right to Know law does allow that. They should allow inspection of records, but they will claim that they can't have you inspect anything. They'll email it to you, and then they take ridiculous amounts of time to give you the emails. So I'm opposed to that. And we need to bring back inspectable records to people, and that will become very important if they're charging fees. So I can't say, that I have been, delinquent in respecting the emails that come to me or inspecting records. I think I've been amazingly thorough on looking at my records. And I might have missed a couple coming in, depending on whether I was in a trial or something was going on. But I think I've done a really good job using my data and looking at it.
Well, I think from this point on, obviously, you can, in exec, you can have a replace all amendment, by the way. So how would you improve the Right to Know law?
How would I improve it? Well, something, I am really careful about changes to the Right to Know law because we want to make certain that we don't write that legislation so it becomes too complex for judges to apply it. When you take a law and you start adding more and more to it, and you keep adding more exemptions, more rules, more restrictions, it becomes very difficult for the court to apply that law. And every judge will have a different interpretation of that law. And right now, the Right to Know law for judges to interpret, I think, is fairly complex.
Okay.
And so I always caution people in my group, let's be very careful about the changes we make.
Right.
Let's make it be just single words or, intent. But Vermont has a Right to Know law. Yeah. They have built so many conditions into their law, it goes on for pages and pages and pages. Well, citizens can't really use it, and the courts are having a heck of a time with it.
So, 2 minutes left. I want to make sure that the senators and judiciary have a copy of this show.
Yeah.
What's your message to them?
Listen to the public. The people who are benefiting most from the right to know law are citizens like me. And we need to have that access that's afforded to us through our constitutional language beyond 91A. And we need to value that constitutional language for a responsive, open, accessible, and accountable government.
And the rules for the ombudsman, they're not done yet.
They still had rules committee meetings. I don't know how close they are to finishing those. I have not gone to the meetings because I've been in court.
Sure.
I've had so much stuff going on with my cases that I haven't gone to the rules meetings, but they're still going on and taking shape.
How can they get in touch with you? The Senate Judiciary.
One, I have an email address, Laurie Ortolano, my first and last name, @gmail. And I've sent my paper and my thoughts up to the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I have a website called www.good-gov.org, GoodGov, and I can be reached on that page and through Facebook.
So I appreciate you coming on the show.
I appreciate you having me.
We're seeing the little red lights come on.
Yes.
So thank you, and we wish you the best. And so what I'm going to encourage is Laurie to do a documentary using this TV station, along with all her resources, and just kind of walk us through what's going on. And I'd love to see that because it's free.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this show
a great idea.
This show is for you. It's for you to speak up. And if you have it doesn't even have to be about politics. It can be about anything that interests you. I'm here for you, and I want to lift you up. And hopefully, I ask the right questions so that you can get your information out, and you don't even have to agree with me. But come on the show. Until next week. Thanks for watching Speaking with the Senator.